And yes, it actually...
Kinsley. On the right, Robert Novak, John Sununu, and Pat Buchanan. Tonight, Sleepless in Seattle.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. Tonight, after some 1,500 shows, after over 6.5 years, Mike Kinsley says goodbye. He's off to Seattle to start a new cyberspace magazine on the internet. But in case you, like me, have trouble surfing on the information superhighway, here's a quick fix for those who suffer from insufficient exposure to Kinsley. Buy his new book, Big Babies. But tonight we brought back Mike's former partner, Pat Buchanan, who now, in case you missed it, is seeking the Republican presidential nomination. And we also have reporting from Palm Springs, Kinsley's co-host since 1992, John Sununu. So just this one night, we have three of us on the right against Mike Kinsley on the left. It's only fair. Mike?
Bob, I can't help admiring your tie. Where'd that come from?
That's a Save the Children's tie, but it's actually for a basketball tournament this week. 4 colleges, and we're doing it for children's charities, and it's my do-gooding cause for the year.
I think in your hands it's more like an Eat the Children tie. Okay, you know, we have serious issues to discuss, like the budget in Bosnia, but the first thing I want to bring up, Pat, is I was really appalled to read in the political hotline today that you're out there in Iowa campaigning on the issue of burdensome government regulation of hog farming, only you're for it. You're for new government regulations over large hog confinement facilities in order to preserve the family farm. Now, what kind of a free marketeer are you?
Listen, this is very consistent. I'm a 10th Amendment man. These hog confinements are regulated by the state and county. Michael, out there in Chevy Chase where you live, what would you say if they put a hog confinement of 5,000 hogs about a quarter mile away and the stink came over your house? You'd have a right under the zoning laws to object to that.
No one's talking about rights, but I thought you mean regulations are okay if they're done in the state and local level?
I think you would agree with there shouldn't be this gigantic stink in the area, which reduces property values. The water quality should be maintained, and you should have zoning regulations. I didn't recommend that the federal government get into this. This is an issue for Iowans and the people in those counties. But Michael, I'll tell you this, 100,000 hog confinements are going to kill the family farms of America.
Was that a good enough reason? Shouldn't the free market determine whether there's a large farm or a small farm?
As you know, Michael, I'm not someone who worships at the altar of efficiency, and I think there are higher values.
Worship in the altar of the free market. You sound more like a liberal. Many people have said that.
I believe in the free market, Michael, but there are some values more important than the free market. The free market will give you the pornography industry, as you know, and the free market will give you the abortion industry, and as you know, I think there are more important values than simple efficiency, and I hope you believe that as well.
Should the government be determining what is the proper size of a farm, or should the free market determine what the proper size of a farm is?
Well, I think by and large the free market, but when you get to a hog confinement like they got, say, in St. Joe, Missouri, 100,000 hogs and things like that, the stench is unbelievable and goes for counties, and I think you got a right to regulate that at the state level.
I've never cared for confining hogs in my life, but Pat, going from the sublime to the trivial, the leader for the Republican presidential nomination, the far ahead Senator Dole, says that he is going to support President Clinton's call for troops to Bosnia. Do you think that's a mistake politically? I know you're against the troops to Bosnia. Do you think it's a political mistake?
I think it's a political mistake because I don't believe Bob Dole believes it's a good idea, and I don't believe John McCain believes it's a good idea, Bob. We are really at a turning point here. I think both those men think Bill Clinton made a foolish commitment offhandedly to put troops in. Now, the United States will suffer an embarrassment and humiliation if we don't honor that commitment. But I think it's better to cut it here than to put 20,000 men and the prestige and credibility of America into a program for peace.
32,000, actually.
Well, into a peace plan in Bosnia that has the earmarks of a national debacle. I think they're making a terrible mistake.
John,
you think he's right, John?
Defend Bob Dole?
Pat, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Michael.
Just ask a question. Go ahead, John.
I was going to ask you if you
Pat,
agree with him.
let me just ask this.
Sure.
Pat, let me ask this. The Republicans traditionally nominate a front runner. That's actually been the case since 1948. If that holds true, Bob Dole's going to win the nomination. Are you committed to support the Republican nominee to gain the #1 priority of defeating Bill Clinton?
Yeah, if Bob Dole's nominated, I have said that I would do nothing to bring about the re-election of Bill Clinton. But I'll tell you this, Bob Dole is the front runner. But up in New Hampshire, John, your home state, he's fallen to 27% in one poll, and I'm at 17. Someone is going to break out to challenge Bob Dole. It always happens. And as a front runner, Bob Dole, I think, is about as weak as Walter Mondale was. So I think there's an opportunity for someone to beat him.
I want to ask John. John used to be, in case those of you have forgotten, he used to be the governor of New Hampshire, and he was the chief of staff at the White House. He was the mastermind of the Bush excuse me, I almost choked on it, the miracle victory in 1992 in New Hampshire.
Like you're setting me up, Bob.
Do you think that Bob Dole made a mistake on this coming out strong for the president's dispatch of troops to Bosnia?
I really would hope that, even though I recognize the president's right to send troops without congressional approval, I think Congress can actually help the president by putting some very specific conditions that ought to be part of the withdrawal plan.
Answer my question.
I think that's one of the things that Bob Dole and Senator McCain are trying to put in this package.
Don't you think, Pat, that people like Bob Dole and even John Sununu are trying to have it both ways on this? They're saying they don't want the responsibility for that war resuming if we don't go along with this peace accord and the peace deal, yet they want to be in a position to say we had nothing to do with it if it turns out to be a disaster.
I think
shouldn't they either say, look, we're for the president because we think it's a good plan, or if they think it's a bad plan, they should be against it?
I hate to say it, Michael, I agree with you 100%. Look, this is a fateful decision we're taking. It could end in a major debacle. Some political leaders, I'm sure, are saying, let Clinton get in there because this will finish him off. It's a disaster, and we can jump on him. But we ought to all take a stand right now for or against this. I think it's the wrong decision, and we ought to stay out.
Now, I have to ask you about
that.
Pat,
you wouldn't cut off
John,
funds.
I remember in the early days of the Yugoslav war, which is not that long ago, early 90s, we used to do it on Crossfire, and you used to argue very strongly to send the 6th Fleet to Dubrovnik to defend the Croatians against the Serbian attackers.
Well, here's the thing. I basically believe that American involvement in Europe should be pretty much confined to naval and air power, and the Serb Navy could have been brushed aside without firing a shot. That's entirely different than putting 20,000 American troops on the ground. If you're going to put troops in there, John, I think they ought to be they should be
forgotten already.
Who is McLaughlin? It really should be European troops. I think there's too much of a premium on shooting an American soldier.
Michael, let me give you a chance to be a guest on the show. Don't you think the president owes it to himself, much less the American public, to make a clear understanding of what conditions he'll require in order to stay and what conditions he'll use in order to get out, so that this thing becomes a clear exit plan as was established in the Gulf War?
I don't think, as one of our guests said the other night, Colonel Taylor, a clear exit strategy is hopeless. You never know what's really going to happen. And furthermore, this is something which might not work out. And I don't think you want to say we are committed to achieving a certain goal, or else you're in there saying we're going to do our best to give these people a chance to make peace. They deserve it.
But Michael,
we'll give it a year or so and hope it works.
But this is inherently contradictory. The President of the United States says it is in our vital interest. And now you're saying, well, if it gets a little rough, we're all going to pull out.
No.
That suggests immediately it is not in our vital interest. If it were, we would go in and get it done and pay the price.
This is the fallacy of the Powell Doctrine. You either go all the way, do everything, or you do absolutely nothing. There's got to be situations, and this is one of them, where you take a middle ground.
But you can't say it's in your vital interest and say if it goes badly, we pull out.
It's in our vital interest to give it the best shot we can. I don't see anything contradictory in that.
Well, I don't see anything vital about it.
If the Europeans end up getting uncomfortable and decide that en masse the NATO contingent ought not to be there, do we follow, do we stay?
That's a very good question, John. We'll have to leave that for the next time, because after we take this break, we're going to be back with a stroll down memory lane with Michael Kinsley.
Yes, another morning, another trip.
And Center in Atlanta, coming up on Prime News, House Speaker Newt Gingrich promises to speak less. We'll tell you why. And President Clinton does a wee bit of bar hopping in Dublin at a pub with an old family name. Please join Natalie Allen and me for details coming up on Prime News at the top of the hour. Crossfire continues in a moment.
It isn't that hard to measure the forces that govern technology. The question is, how do you measure a technology company? At Lockheed Martin, we measure ourselves not simply by our success, but by yours. Lockheed Martin, mission success.
Something happens when you read the Wall Street Journal every business day. You start seeing opportunities where you never saw them before. See for yourself. Subscribe now to the Wall Street Journal. The Journal keeps you right at the heart of what's going on in business. Call now for the Journal and get your free guide to planning your financial future. Facts you need to start planning a secure future right now. Get 10 weeks of the Wall Street Journal for just $38 and get the guide free.
Call now, 800-257-1257. That's 800-257-1257.
Class is so much fun to drive. What would you possibly want to stop for?
Boy, that's a first.
Saturday on CNN's Evans and Novak. U.S. troops to Bosnia. It's a mission of peacekeeping, but could the peacekeepers become targets? Senators Charles Robb and Hank Brown debate the issue. Saturday, 5:30 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back to Crossfire. I had a nightmare once. I dreamed that I found myself doing Crossfire with Pat Buchanan, John Sununu, and Robert Novak all at the same time. Well, who says dreams don't come true? That's exactly what CNN has cooked up to bid me farewell after 6 loyal years of service. Thanks a lot, Ted. Pat interrupts his presidential campaign to join us here in the studio. The Prince of Darkness is here, too. And John joins us live from his golf course side condominium in Palm Springs, California. Bob, you start.
But first, we are going to look at some of the golden moments with Mike Kinsley over the last 6.5 years on Crossfire.
You know, that beard is not going to make Gillette and Company very happy. Maybe that's going to end up costing Mr. Turner a few bucks in ads.
I don't know. Some people might say that I'm a walking illustration for the advantages of shaving. What do you think?
I don't know, Mike. It looks to me like penicillin would clear that up.
If I sleep with my pet poodle, maybe I can be on television and be on Jerry Springer's show.
That is sick.
John's been throwing around these statistics for weeks now.
The correct number out of your own article is that it doubled in 40 years. That's a 1.8% rate of growth.
I called today.
Out of your own article,
I don't know
Michael
what you're talking
Kinsley.
about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Did he perform?
You're creating the problem.
Did he perform?
If young fellows like our makeup man and our production assistant or decent young Americans want to go in there and eat chicken wings and look at good-looking girls, why do you begrudge them it, Michael? Tell me why.
I'll tell you later, Bob. Congressman, this study that came out yesterday.
Bob,
quiet for a moment, please.
Bob, calm down. You calm down.
Yes,
Bob.
Fine.
No.
You have made an accusation publicly against the First Lady, and I'm asking you if you have any evidence again about it, and you have essentially said no. I'm going to give you a chance to think if you got any.
I have not essentially said no whatsoever.
Well, where's your evidence?
Michael,
if you're so big on people making information public, well, answer it. You're not answering
Michael, you asked me a question.
Go ahead.
Give me a chance to answer. Don't be rude and embarrass yourself by interrupting me. Now,
is sex important and pleasurable?
Of course, and that didn't make news.
Do I think he's guilty?
Yeah.
I'm not telling.
What's his verdict going to be?
I said it last week, and I stand by it. The quickness of the verdict makes me even more sure of it. Guilty.
Join us again next time for another edition of Crossfire.
Crossfire. Explain to me what the difference is between Panama, which you were a big supporter of.
Yeah, and I still am. First of all, the canal, it's that thing that runs through the country. Michael, with all respect, your beard has affected your brain. It really has.
Can I answer this, or we can get up here, we can debate. They're looking for Kinsley's leave, and they may, maybe a chance for you.
From the laugh on Mike Kinsley, good night for Crossfire.
Okay, how can we ever give up this wonderful pleasure of Kinsley? John Sununu in Palm Springs, you have a question for Mike?
Yeah, Michael, if liberalism isn't dying, how come old-time liberals like Bill Clinton are running around trying to look like conservative Republicans?
Well, I would say conservative Republicans are going around looking like liberals. You got Pat here complaining about the Republican cuts in Medicare. You got Newt Gingrich who's claiming we're not cutting it, we're not touching it, we love Medicare. Bob Dole claims he's been cornered when someone points out that he accidentally says he voted against Medicare, and now they're all saying they love Medicare, they love Social Security, they love all these aspects of the Great Society that help the middle class. I would say that the Great Society and liberalism have triumphed, and you guys are just snipping around the edges.
Michael, you've got Dick Morris propping the president up, trying to tell him how to look more and more conservative every day. How are we going to find a liberal to replace you?
There's plenty of people. There's people dying for this job, John, and some of them are going to give you a very rough time. I've been too easy on you all these years. You're going to miss me.
What was your most golden moment in this wonderful time you've spent here, Mike?
I think my lowest moment was
golden. I say, well, go give me the lowest. All right.
My most interesting moment was when we had Radovan Karadzic, the Bosnian Serb leader, on Crossfire, and he denied. This was very early on in the tragedy in Bosnia, and he denied there was a siege of Sarajevo. And that was a very interesting moment to me because sitting here in a TV studio, I realized you couldn't prove there was a siege of Sarajevo. And furthermore, all your follow-up questions you usually have for the various evasions politicians tended to take are absolutely useless if someone absolutely boldly denies the obvious.
Have you been in touch with the former ambassador from Iraq?
Oh,
the fellow you called.
I called him. I had the gall to call the former ambassador from Iraq during the Gulf War a liar.
Right, and you did the same with Karadzic, didn't you?
Well, they were both liars. What's wrong with that?
No, I think you called the fellow a liar after. Did you think you should have done that after he'd gone off the air, or should you have done it right to him?
He was hurt. His feelings were hurt. I don't think either you or I or anyone else cared very much if we were hurting the feelings of Saddam Hussein's ambassador at that point.
If those were the high points, what's the low point?
I think we're at it now.
Michael, if you had to do it over again, would you have gone with the beard?
That beard became a bigger deal than I ever intended. I was on vacation, and I stopped shaving, and I looked in the mirror and I thought, well, I have a beard. And I came back on TV, and everyone said, it's very courageous of you to be growing a beard on television.
What advice do you give? What advice are you going to give to your new replacement, whomever that's going to be?
Don't grow a beard, I guess.
What is it like to be the idol of lefties all over the world?
You tell me, Bob.
Well, I know I'm not the idol of
the two most common questions I get out on the road are not about Bosnia. You know, one of them is, have you ever considered reaching across that desk at that guy? And the second is, does Kinsley really believe all that expletive?
And what do you answer?
First, why I don't reach across the desk, I tell him you'd be surprised how much Ted Turner pays me to sit across from that guy.
The two most frequent questions I get out on the road are the same one as you. The first one's the same as you. Don't you want to sometimes reach across the table and strangle those guys? We don't hit people, we strangle them. And the other one is, don't you really like one of them better than the other? And the answer to both those questions, of course, is yes.
What was the lowest point? I want to hear your lowest point. All the time.
It must have been a point when you walked down.
When you wanted to walk out.
That's it. And I will not be back tomorrow.
Yeah, it was about the second night I was doing the show, and Pat was on vacation, and I had Novak to face, and I thought, I can't do this night after night. There's just no way. And Randy Douthit, who was the producer at the time, said, "Wait, it'll get better. Pat will be back." And that didn't sound better to me at the time, but actually it was.
And when Pat ran his second presidential campaign, you said, "I gotta go." That was it.
Well, I thought if Pat could find something more interesting to do, maybe I could too.
So you think this news magazine on the internet's going to work?
I'm not at all sure it's going to work. Somebody is going to produce a great new, take advantage of this new medium to produce a great new publication. It might well not be me, but I figure I'd give it a shot.
Can't they get all the material from other magazines right now on the internet? I mean, can't they take off, say, Time or New Republic, National Review?
They're not designed for it.
That is called shovelware, Pat. That means people are just taking stuff from the print and shoveling it onto the internet. We want to create something new. Thank you for this free commercial, by the way. I am not fleeing Washington. I'm not. I think this. There's a lot of garbage about how terrible Washington is, mostly written and spoken by people who live here. These two gentlemen have lived here all their adult lives.
Nobody ever leaves.
I heard a good comment about that by a fellow who had been out for about a year and a half, Jerry Nachman. They asked him, he said, "I do not miss the rat race, but sometimes I do miss the rats."
I'll miss quite a few of the rats, too. No, I did a study. You're absolutely right, John, that nobody ever leaves. You're an exception. You've left sort of half-time. I did a study once of the Reagan people, where they all were. I took the top 100 Reagan people in 1985. And where were they? Where were they? Yeah, you just barely made it, I think. Where were they in a couple years after Reagan was out of power? And of course, most of them were still in Washington.
Sure.
Mike, you've done everything but serve in government. Would you like to be in the second Clinton term? You've been such a wonderful supporter of the president. Would you like to be like Secretary of Labor or something like that?
I'm hoping to get an ambassadorship from Pat.
The Maldive Islands is still open.
Can I get it? How much will it cost me, Pat?
We're posting the sales prices next week.
You mean there's substance to the fact that you're leaving Crossfire to go and run part of Pat's campaign?
Well, Pat is my nominee for the Republican nomination, not just because we know each other, of course, because I think he's President Clinton's best hope. Possibly except for Bob Dornan, I'm not sure.
How do you like Senator Dole? Do you think he'd be your kind of president?
Well, I've said this before. I really enjoy, as a journalist, I love Bob Dole because he is so cynical. All politicians are cynical. Even Pat is a bit cynical. But cynicism usually leads politicians to lie. But a really, really corrosive cynicism, which I think Bob Dole has, leads them to some burst through that and tell the truth again, which he occasionally does.
Okay, well, everybody stick around. Nobody's leaving, and we'll all be back with a final word from Michael before he goes off into the beyond.
Freedent chewers? Here's what you've been asking for.
A softer chewing Freedent?
Much, much softer.
Longer lasting flavor?
Much, much longer. Introducing new, better than ever, non-stick Freedent.
This is softer.
Lots easier to chew.
And softer's only half the story.
The flavor, it just keeps going and going. It really lasts.
Yeah. Softer chewing, longer lasting Freedent.
Now this is great gum.
Try new non-stick Freedent. It's better than ever.
Walk into any Office Depot and two things are obvious. Thousands of brand-named office products and guaranteed low prices. But that's not all.
You can order by phone or fax and get guaranteed delivery next business day.
And for corporate clients who require a professional account executive, Office Depot's Business Services Division provides total business solutions nationwide.
Taking care of business. Office Depot, taking care of business for companies of every size, everywhere, every day.
This GE compact fluorescent bulb gives you soft, warm light.
Take the ball, Jamie.
It's an energy-efficient bulb that lasts year after year.
Hit the ball, Jamie.
Up to 9,000 hours longer than an ordinary bulb.
Outside with the ball, Jamie.
So it won't need to be changed for about 7 years.
Hey, Jamie, how many grown-ups does it take to change a light bulb? Change a light bulb? Why would anybody need to change a light bulb?
The revolutionary GE compact fluorescent bulb. Saturday, it's an hour of Washington's best.
You'll get to see them the next weeks with me and John Sununu. John?
Michael, we are going to miss you at CNN. I'm going to miss you on Crossfire. 3 years ago when I started, you made it awfully easy for me to join the Crossfire team. You've been a great partner to work with, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thanks, John. Thanks a lot.
Pat? Do you have anything good to say about it?
No, you're going to be very difficult to replace. There's no doubt about that, Michael, and I do wish you very, very well in your new magazine on the internet. Good luck.
Thanks very much.
And if you ever need a TV fix, you can know where you can come. There's always an open seat for you.
Thanks. You can't go 24 hours with being on TV. I'm going to see if I can beat that record at least for a little bit, John.
What will you do out there in Seattle, Mike, when you feel like, geez, I just got to get on the tube and show myself to America and the world?
I'll go to Starbucks, have a cup of decaf, and lie down till it passes. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm John Sununu. Join us again next week for another edition of Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Pat Buchanan. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Robert Novak. Join us again next time for another edition of Crossfire.
Crossfire. Prime News is next on CNN. Here's Natalie Allen in Atlanta with tonight's headlines. Natalie?
And Mike, from all of us in Atlanta, we wish you the best. We'll miss you. Just ahead on Prime News, these U.S. troops in Bosnia will soon be joined by hundreds more. Also, near record floodwaters in the west show signs of subsiding. And all aboard for a fantastic ride and a little bit of holiday heaven. Join Lyndon Souls and me for these stories and more coming next on Prime News.